Everyone laughed at the waitress's burned invitation. Then the Mafia Boss read the name on the back. Chapter 1, The Burned Invitation. Everyone laughed when Mara Quinn laid the burned wedding invitation beside the Mafia Boss's empty plate. The laughter rose from the charity hall like champagne bubbles, bright and mean, while the old brass chandeliers hummed above 30 white tables and one long head table dressed in ivory linen. Mara stood in her black waitress dress with a coffee stain on one cuff and a silver tray tucked under her arm, and she did not move the burned card away. It was small, brittle, and blackened along one corner. One of the women in pearls looked at it as if Mara had placed a dead insect on the table. "Honey," the woman said, lifting her voice so the donors could hear, "trash goes in the kitchen." A few men laughed harder than the joke deserved. Mara kept her fingers flat beside the invitation. "If this is trash," she said, "why is Signora Moretti's maiden name printed on the back?" The laughter cracked. At the far end of the head table, Vincenzo Moretti stopped removing his black leather gloves. He was 42, broad-shouldered, and still enough to make silence feel like a command. His black three-piece suit had no shine to it, only weight. His overcoat hung from the chair behind him like a second shadow, and two disciplined men in dark suits stood near the banquet hall doors, where the black SUVs waited under the streetlights. Not a CEO. Not a rich man playing dangerous. Vincenzo Moretti was the kind of man who could make a crowded hall remember every debt it owed. His dark eyes moved from Mara's face to the burned invitation. "Say that again," he said. His voice was not loud, but every waiter stopped breathing. Mara had worked neighborhood banquets since she was 17. She had watched men with clean hands ruin women with dirty smiles, watched church basements turn into campaign rooms, watched old family names appear on donation cards when the people who carried those names had never agreed to anything. She knew when the linen was wrong, when the seating chart had been changed, when a sponsor's envelope had been opened with steam and pressed closed again. And she knew that the burned invitation in front of Vincenzo Moretti did not belong in a charity dinner for the Lucia Bianchi Memorial Kitchen. It belonged to a wedding that had not happened 27 years ago. "Your mother's maiden name," Mara said, steadier now because his attention had made the room dangerous in a clean way. "Lucia Bianchi. It is printed on the back of this invitation in the same old blue ink as the donor cards tonight." The woman in pearls gave a sharp laugh. "That is ridiculous. Mr. Moretti, this girl spilled soup on table 4 an hour ago. She is trying to create drama because she is embarrassed." "Table 4 ordered soup after the salad course," Mara said without looking at her. "The spill came from your nephew bumping the bus cart while hiding a donation envelope in his jacket." The nephew froze near the dessert station. Vincenzo's eyes did not move from Mara. "Who are you?" he asked. "Mara Quinn. Banquet waitress. Sometimes coat check. Sometimes setup crew. Tonight, apparently, the only person who read the backs of the cards." A low sound passed through the hall. It was not laughter now. It was the sound people made when they realized a servant had been counting. At Vincenzo's right hand, Carlo Venturi, the smiling advisor who had organized the benefit, rose half an inch from his chair. "Vincenzo, this is not the place. We have donors waiting. The foundation announcement is scheduled before dessert." "Sit down," Vincenzo said. Carlo sat. Mara picked up the invitation with 2 fingers because the corner still flaked ash if handled carelessly. She turned it over, showing the back to Vincenzo and, by accident or courage, to everyone leaning forward. The printed front had been mostly burned. Only a few words remained. "Together with their families. Saturday evening. Saint Agnes Hall." But the back had survived. In faded blue ink, written in a careful old hand, was a list of names. At the top, Lucia Bianchi. Under it, Elena Russo. Teresa Vale. Mary Quinn. Mara had seen her grandmother's name first. That was why she had taken the card out of the ash box in the pantry instead of throwing it away like the head captain ordered. But it was Lucia's name that would stop a man like Vincenzo. His mother had died 6 years earlier, and the room still used her like a candle, lighting speeches with her kindness while collecting checks in her memory. Mara had served 3 Moretti events in 2 years, and every time, someone with a polished smile had mentioned Lucia as if the dead woman had personally approved the menu, the ribbon, the foundation, the donation pledge. Tonight, Mara had found out they were using more than her name. They were using her old promise. Vincenzo took the invitation from Mara. His gloved fingertips did not touch her skin, but she felt the intention of his carefulness more than she would have felt contact. He read the back once. Then again. His jaw tightened, not with confusion but with recognition he did not want. Where did you get this? In the pantry ash box, Mara said. Behind the extra votive candles and the fake donation plaques. Someone burned 3 old cards before the guests arrived. This one did not finish burning because the sprinklers dripped over the shelf. Why were you in the pantry? Because table 7's vegetarian meals were missing, and the kitchen captain told me to find the old warming cabinet key. I found the key, the ash, and 3 donor cards that should not exist. Carlo rose again, slower this time. This is absurd. Vincenzo, old family keepsakes are often used for memorial events. Your mother gave half her life to this neighborhood. My mother did not use her maiden name after 1989, Vincenzo said. The air changed. Mara noticed who looked surprised and who looked afraid. Carlo looked afraid. The woman in pearls looked at Carlo. The nephew near the dessert station took one quiet step toward the side door. Mara put her tray down across the doorway before he could reach it. She did it smoothly, without looking brave for the sake of being brave. The silver tray landed on the floor with a flat sound. Careful, she told him. The floor is waxed. The nephew stopped. One of Vincenzo's bodyguards moved. Vincenzo lifted one finger, and the bodyguard paused. For the first time that night, the Mafia boss looked at Mara as if she had not merely interrupted his dinner but rearranged the shape of the room. Continue, he said. Mara swallowed once. Her throat had gone dry, but fear was not the same as weakness, and she had never respected people who confused the two. The foundation papers say tonight's donations go to restore the Lucia Moretti Memorial Kitchen, she said. But the old invitation says Lucia Bianchi and 3 other women raised money for a free supper room at Saint Agnes before she married your father. That supper room closed when the building was sold. The donor cards tonight list the new foundation address as this hall, not Saint Agnes. Vincenzo looked down at the burned invitation. Mara kept going because stopping now would be cowardice dressed as manners. Someone is using your mother's maiden name to redirect money from an old women's kitchen into a private foundation controlled by Mr. Venturi. They burned the old invitations because the names on the back prove the promise existed before your family owned anything. The hall was silent. Not polite silent. Not bored silent. The kind of silence that held its hands over its mouth. Carlo's smile disappeared. She is guessing. No, Mara said. I am serving. The word struck oddly because it should have made her smaller. Instead, it made her impossible to dismiss. When you serve people for 16 years, she said, you learn who signs with the same pen, who turns the wrong envelope face down, who says grace with one hand and pockets cash with the other. You learn which women are remembered because they were useful to powerful men, and which women are remembered because they fed people no one else saw. Vincenzo laid the burned invitation flat on the table. Bring me the donor cards. Carlo moved so sharply his chair scraped. Vincenzo, I strongly advise against disrupting a public charitable event based on a waitress's story. Vincenzo turned his head. The room remembered who he was. I did not ask for advice, he said. I asked for the cards. Chapter 2, The Names on the Back. Mara walked to the service station because running would have made everyone feel safer. She did not intend to make them safe. The donor cards sat in a cream box under a floral arrangement that had cost more than Mara's rent. She had noticed the cards earlier because the printer's ink was too blue. Banquet eyes, her grandmother used to say, were different from guest eyes. Guests saw chandeliers. Banquet workers saw where the extension cords hid. Mara lifted the box and carried it back through the hall. A few guests tried to look away from her and failed. The woman in pearls whispered, "This is so inappropriate." Mara stopped beside her chair. So is stealing from kitchens that fed widows. Someone gasped. Vincenzo's mouth did not move, but his eyes sharpened with something that might have been amusement if the room were less dangerous. Mara placed the donor box in front of him and removed the first card. The paper was thick, expensive, and embossed with a gold seal that showed a bowl of bread under a cross. Beneath it, in the same blue ink as the burned invitation, were the words, Lucia Bianchi Memorial Renewal Fund. Vincenzo stared at the name. His mother's name, but not the name the Moretti family used for public affairs. Not the name on the charitable trust. Not the name on her grave. They made a second foundation, Mara said. Who is they? She looked at Carlo, then at the nephew, then at the woman in pearls. The people who corrected every server tonight if we said Moretti instead of Bianchi. Carlo spread his hands. Because the memorial honors the woman she was before she married. That is all. Then why does the transfer form put the renewal fund under Venturi Community Holdings? Mara asked. Carlo's face changed too quickly. Vincenzo saw it. So did Mara. Vincenzo held out his hand. Form. Mara walked to the narrow table behind the flowers, lifted the ivory folder under the centerpiece, and brought it to him. The head captain, Mr. Doyle, hissed her name as she passed. Mara. She did not stop. Mara Quinn, you will never work another event in this city. She turned, finally giving him the full weight of her tired brown eyes. Mr. Doyle, you still owe the dishwashers overtime from Easter. His mouth closed. A bodyguard near the door smiled at the floor. Vincenzo opened the folder. The top sheet was a ceremony program. The second was a donation pledge. The third was the transfer form, waiting for his signature beneath a paragraph about honoring Lucia's wish to create a permanent private kitchen for approved families. Approved families. Mara hated those words. A hungry person was hungry before a committee decided if they were worthy. Vincenzo read the page, and for a moment his face showed nothing at all. Then he looked at Carlo. You put my mother's maiden name on a shell account. Carlo's hands rose again. No. Absolutely not. That form was drafted by the attorneys. We were preserving flexibility. You were preserving access. For the community. For yourself. The words were quiet, but they hit the hall like falling silverware. Mara saw one of the donors lower her checkbook into her lap. The woman in pearls leaned forward, sweating now under her makeup. Mr. Moretti, please. Carlo has worked on this for months. This waitress came in with a burned piece of paper and a story. The waitress came in with my mother's name, Vincenzo said. Mara felt that sentence land somewhere under her ribs. Not because he defended her. She had learned not to build a home in any man's defense. Because he had corrected the room's scale. He did not say she was pretty. He did not say she was innocent. He did not say she was special in the way men sometimes called a woman special when they wanted to own the moment she had created. He said she had brought evidence. That mattered more. Vincenzo set the transfer form beside the burned invitation. Explain the names on the back. Carlo looked at the card, then at the donors, then at the exits. He was a man who had lived too long among people who confused charm with proof. Lucia kept lists, he said. Everyone knows that. This is not a grocery list, Mara said. Vincenzo glanced at her. Tell me. She pointed to the names, keeping her finger above the paper so she would not damage the ash-thin edge. These women signed the first supper room promise. Lucia Bianchi, Elena Russo, Teresa Vale, and Mara Quinn. Quinn, Vincenzo said. My grandmother, Mara said. The hall shifted around her name. For years, Mara Quinn had been the kind of woman rich people praised after death because living poor women were harder to romanticize. She had boiled potatoes in Saint Agnes basement until her hands split in winter. She had fed dock workers, widows, boys who lied about being old enough to work, girls who lied about having eaten already. She had kept folded receipts in a biscuit tin and wrote every name in pencil because names mattered when money men came later to say no one remembered. Mara still had the biscuit tin. She had not planned to bring it into a Mafia Boss's evening. But life rarely gave women like Mara the luxury of dramatic timing. My grandmother said 4 women paid the first rent on the supper room, Mara said. They promised that any money raised in those names would go back to food. Not speeches. Not naming rights. Not private guest lists. Food. Vincenzo looked at the invitation again. You knew my mother? No. I knew her chicken soup recipe. The sentence slipped out before Mara could polish it. For the first time, something human moved across Vincenzo Moretti's face. It was not softness. Not yet. It was recognition, sharp with grief. My mother put lemon in it, he said. Too much, Mara said. The nearest bodyguard coughed into his fist. The hall sphere bent, just slightly, into bewilderment. Vincenzo's eyes stayed on Mara. You think my mother used too much lemon? I think she used enough lemon to make children think they were eating sunshine, which is beautiful if you are 6 and aggressive if you are 40. The bodyguard lost the fight and laughed once. Mara immediately regretted speaking, but Vincenzo did not look insulted. He looked more awake than he had all evening. She said the same thing, he murmured. About the lemon? About sunshine. Mara had no answer to that. Carlo saw the shift and lunged for control. This is touching, but irrelevant. The question is legal authority, and I have documents. So do I, Mara said. Carlo stared. Mara reached into the pocket of her black apron and removed a folded photocopy, worn from being opened too often. She had copied it 6 months ago when Saint Agnes announced the old kitchen would be turned into storage for event chairs. My grandmother's receipt, she said. First month rent. Saint Agnes basement. For signatures. Same names as the back of the invitation. She placed it beside the burned card. The room leaned in. There it was, not pretty, not embossed, not framed. A cheap copy of a cheap receipt. And it was stronger than every gold seal in the hall. Vincenzo touched the edge of the photocopy. His hands were large and steady, but when he saw Lucia Bianchi's signature, the stillness changed. It was no longer command. It was restraint. He was holding back a memory that had teeth. "Why did you bring this tonight?" he asked. "I did not," Mara said. "I carry it." "Why?" She heard the judgment before he spoke it. A woman carrying an old receipt looked sentimental, or unstable, or desperate, depending on who wanted to dismiss her. Mara lifted her chin anyway. Because people keep forgetting women after using their names. The sentence landed harder than she intended. Vincenzo did not look away. Neither did Mara. Something passed between them that had nothing to do with charity forms or burned invitations. It was not romance yet. It was not trust. It was a door opening in a room where neither of them expected a door. Vincenzo closed the ivory folder. "No one signs anything tonight." Carlo's voice sharpened. "You cannot cancel in front of donors." Vincenzo stood. The room stood with him because fear had old manners. "Watch me." Chapter 3, The Woman Who Carried Receipts. Vincenzo did not shout when he cancelled the announcement. That made it worse for Carlo. He stood at the center of the banquet hall beneath the chandeliers and informed 30 donors, 5 family advisors, 3 priests, 2 local councilmen, and 1 sweating event captain that the Lucia Bianchi Memorial Renewal Fund would not receive $1 until every account, transfer form, and historical claim had been reviewed. He did not mention betrayal. He did not mention theft. He did not need to. By the time he finished, half the room had already begun rewriting its memory of the evening. No one had really trusted Carlo. No one had really liked the foundation structure. Everyone had always found the private kitchen language suspicious. Mara watched the transformation with the flat calm of a woman who had served too many political dinners. Rich guilt moved quickly when a stronger man opened the exit. Mr. Doyle approached her near the coffee station after the guests began murmuring over dessert they no longer wanted. "You understand you are done here," he said. Mara poured decaf into a white cup and set it on a saucer. "The lady at table 6 asked for this. I am speaking to you. I noticed. You embarrassed this hall." Mara looked around at the ivory linen, the gold chairs, the untouched glazed carrots, and the checkbooks that had almost funded a lie. "Good." His face reddened. "You think Mr. Moretti will protect you because you made a scene?" "No," Mara said. "I think Mr. Moretti has bigger problems than my employment status." "You are insolent." "I am 34 years old, underpaid, and too tired to be ornamental." Mr. Doyle stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You will leave through the kitchen before I call security." A shadow fell across the coffee station. Mara knew it was Vincenzo before she turned because Mr. Doyle's expression went blank with self-preservation. "Call them," Vincenzo said. Mr. Doyle swallowed. "Mr. Moretti, I was simply handling staff discipline." "Were you?" "Miss Quinn violated service protocol." "Which protocol?" "She interrupted a private event." "With evidence." "She removed materials from a restricted pantry. Where someone burned family documents." "She spoke disrespectfully to guests." "They were lying." Mara glanced at Vincenzo despite herself. He had not raised his voice, and that restraint was more unsettling than fury. He looked at Mr. Doyle as if the man's excuses were crumbs on a black coat. Mr. Doyle tried a final angle. "With respect, sir, staff cannot be allowed to decide what is important." Mara almost laughed. Vincenzo did not. "That sentence," he said, "is why she saw what you missed." Mr. Doyle had no answer. "Pay every member of your staff tonight," Vincenzo continued. "Full shift, overtime included, and double for dishwashers." "Double?" "You heard me. That is not standard. Neither is hiding ash in a pantry." Mr. Doyle nodded so fast his collar shifted. When he left, Mara exhaled through her nose. "I did not ask you to do that," she said. Vincenzo looked at her. "No. I can handle Doyle." "I noticed." That should have ended the exchange, but he remained by the coffee station. Up close, he looked less like a public myth and more like a man built from sleepless discipline. There was silver at his temples, a faint line beside his mouth, and a grief in his eyes that did not make him gentle, only dangerous in a more specific way. Mara held the coffee pot between them like a practical shield. Do you need coffee? No. Then you are blocking service. One of his bodyguards stared at the floor again. Vincenzo's mouth almost changed. Not a smile. The rumor of one. You speak to everyone like that? Only people standing where the cream should go. He moved one step to the side. Mara reached past him for the cream pitcher, and for one clean second his hand lifted as if to help. Then he stopped himself, maybe because men like Vincenzo Moretti did not reach for cream pitchers at banquet halls, or maybe because he did not yet know how to be useful in a woman's work without turning it into theater. She appreciated the stopping more than the reaching. Who else knows about the receipt? He asked. My sister. A nun at Saint Agnes. The copy machine at the public library. Where is the original? Safe. That is not an answer. It is the only one you get tonight. His eyes sharpened. Mara met them. She had been afraid of him since he walked in. She was still afraid. Sensible people were afraid of powerful men, and only fools mistook fear for proof that obedience was owed. Vincenzo watched her for a long second, then nodded once. Fair. That word surprised her. It surprised him too, perhaps, because he looked away toward the head table where Carlo sat rigid under the attention of a bodyguard. I need to see Saint Agnes, he said. Then call the parish office. Tonight. The parish office is closed. You have a key. Mara poured coffee into a cup and set it on a tray. What makes you think that? You found a warming cabinet key in a pantry at a hall you do not own. That means I know where keys are, not that I steal them. Do you have a key to Saint Agnes? No. He waited. Mara sighed. I know where Sister Beatrice hides one. Take me. No. The answer came quickly, and she saw the room react to it. A waiter carrying plates slowed. A donor stopped pretending to search her purse. Even Carlo looked over with a small, hopeful flicker, as if Mara's refusal might restore the old order. Vincenzo did not move. No, he repeated. No, Mara said. You do not get to storm into Saint Agnes at 10:30 at night because your advisors lied to you. That kitchen fed people before your name scared rooms. If you go without bodyguards in the basement, without making Sister Beatrice think an arrest is about to happen, and without treating old receipts like property you can seize. One of the bodyguards shifted his weight. Vincenzo lifted 2 fingers this time. The man went still. Anything else? Vincenzo asked. Yes. You ask. His face changed then, not in anger but in collision. Mara had spoken to a habit older than both of them. Men like him did not ask for entry. They entered, and the world rearranged itself afterward. But the burned invitation lay on the head table behind him, and the names on its back had not belonged to men who entered. They had belonged to women who opened doors to feed people. Vincenzo looked at Mara's coffee-stained cuff, at the tray balanced against her hip, at the small burn mark on her thumb from some kitchen accident he would never have noticed 2 hours ago. Will you take me to Saint Agnes, he said, each word deliberate, and show me what my mother promised? Mara held his gaze. There it was. Not surrender. Not softness. A dangerous man choosing the smaller door because a waitress told him the larger one was wrong. After service, she said. When does service end? When the last rich person stops needing emotional support from cake. The bodyguard laughed outright this time. Vincenzo looked at him. The bodyguard became architectural. Mara picked up table 6 decaf and turned away before her mouth betrayed her. Behind her, Vincenzo said, I will wait. She did not look back. But something in her chest, something overworked and suspicious and deeply inconvenient, heard the promise. Chapter 4, Saint Agnes Basement. At 11:45, Mara unlocked the side door of Saint Agnes with a key hidden behind a loose brick under the statue of Saint Joseph. I said I did not have a key, she reminded Vincenzo. You were technically honest. Technically honest keeps women employed. Does it? No. But it keeps us entertained. The church hallway smelled of floor wax, old hymnals, and rain trapped in wool coats. Vincenzo had left both bodyguards outside beside the black SUV, though Mara noticed how carefully he checked the alley, the stained glass windows, and the shadow under the stairwell before following her inside. He was not pretending to be harmless. That mattered too. A harmless man could not protect anything. A dangerous man who listened could. Mara switched on the basement lights. The old supper room appeared below them in pieces, folding tables stacked against one wall, a row of dented metal chairs, a service window with chipped green paint, a refrigerator humming in the corner, and the long stainless counter where women had once ladled soup in winter. Vincenzo stopped on the last stair. The room was not beautiful. The ceiling tile sagged. The linoleum was patched in 3 places. Someone had taped a hand-drawn sign above the sink that read, "Wash the pot you use, even if you are holy." Mara loved that sign. Her grandmother had written it. "This is it?" Vincenzo asked. "This is it. My mother worked here? Before she married. After too, sometimes. She came through the back because Moretti men did not like their wives doing public charity without permission." His jaw tightened. Mara did not apologize. The dead did not become saints because the living got uncomfortable. She walked to a cabinet near the old service window and opened the top drawer. Inside were laminated recipe cards, measuring spoons tied with string, a cracked ladle, and a small stack of photocopied receipts held together with a rubber band. "Sister Beatrice keeps copies because she does not trust digital archives," Mara said. "Smart woman. Terrifying woman." He came closer, not crowding her this time. The difference was subtle and enormous. In the banquet hall, his presence had claimed space automatically. Here, in the basement that belonged to old women and soup steam, he seemed to measure where his shoulders ended. Mara noticed. She wished she had not. She spread the receipts on the stainless counter. Vincenzo removed his gloves slowly. "May I?" The question made her look up. It was simple. Practical. It also landed in her like a quiet turn she had not been ready to name. "Yes," she said. He touched the first receipt with bare fingers. There was something intimate about it that had nothing to do with skin. His hands were capable of violence, Mara knew that. The city knew that. But here they were careful with a cheap copy of a cheap receipt because 4 women had signed it before power decided their promise was inconvenient. "Lucia wrote this," he said. "Yes. She was 23. My grandmother was 26. Did they know each other well? Well enough to fight over salt?" His eyes moved to her. Mara shrugged. Mara Quinn believed most people undersalted because they lacked conviction. Lucia believed lemon could solve what salt could not. This time Vincenzo did smile. It was small and gone quickly, but it changed his whole face before command returned to cover it. "They would have hated each other," he said. "They cooked together for 12 years. That is not the opposite." Mara laughed before she could stop herself. The sound startled both of them. For a moment, the basement felt less like evidence and more like a kitchen after closing, when the doors were locked and the people who had spent all night serving others finally told the truth. Vincenzo looked at her mouth, then away. Mara saw it. Heat moved under her collar, which annoyed her because she had more important things to do than notice a mafia boss noticing her. She picked up the burned invitation to recover. The back names matched the first receipt and the second lease. But tonight's foundation paperwork removes 3 names and keeps only Lucia. "Because my name brings money." "Yes. And my mother's name brings guilt." Mara hesitated. "Yes." He accepted the answer without flinching, which made him more difficult to dislike. She showed him the old supper room ledger, the one Sister Beatrice kept in a plastic sleeve. Each page listed donations and meals served. $5 from a dock worker. 12 cents from a child who insisted on paying. 2 sacks of potatoes from Mr. Bell on 8th Street. 3 hours cleaning from Lucia Bianchi. Vincenzo stopped at that line. She cleaned? Everyone cleaned. My father never said. Would he have admired it? The question was too sharp. Mara knew it the second she said it, and the basement seemed to draw in around them. Vincenzo's expression closed. "No," he said. Mara could have softened. She could have apologized to the powerful man whose father had been proud, possessive, and dead. Instead, because she was tired and because the names on the back of the invitation deserved better than politeness, she said, "Then maybe that is why she did it here." He looked at her. The air held. Then he nodded once. "Maybe." That one word did more to unsettle Mara than anger would have. Anger she knew how to handle. Anger had edges. Men who yelled could be waited out, sidestepped, embarrassed, or reported if one had enough witnesses. Listening was more dangerous. Listening asked a woman to risk believing the room might change. Vincenzo leaned over the ledger again. What did Venturi want? Control of the renewal fund, the donor list, and the building grant. Once he moved the money into a private foundation, Saint Agnes would become a ceremonial partner. Pretty name, no authority. And the hall? The hall gets events. Approved families get meals. Real hungry people get applications. He was quiet. Mara waited. You said you carry your grandmother's receipt, he said eventually. Why tonight? Because tonight they used the old invitation. Before tonight. She looked down at the counter. The basement hum seemed louder. Because I thought someone would do this eventually, she said. Use an old woman's kindness to build a locked door. I did not know it would be your people. My people. Yes. You are not afraid to say that. I am afraid, she said. I am saying it anyway. He turned fully toward her. In the fluorescent light, he looked less untouchable and more tired, which was worse for her self-control. A powerful man was easy to keep at a distance. A tired, powerful man, standing in a church basement with his mother's handwriting under his hand, was more complicated. Why? He asked. Because my grandmother fed yours before either of them had men telling stories about them. Because women like them do not get statues unless powerful sons find a use for grief. Because I have spent half my life bringing coffee to tables where men decide what kindness is allowed to cost. The words came faster now. She could feel 16 years of banquet halls behind them, every forced smile, every hand that snapped for service, every woman who had slipped her a folded bill and whispered thank you as if gratitude had to be hidden too. And because, Mara finished, quieter, if I let them burn the last invitation, no one would remember Mary Quinn was there. Vincenzo said nothing. That was good. If he had offered pity, she might have hated him. He looked down at the burned invitation and then at the receipt. I remember, he said. Mara's throat closed in a way she did not permit. You did not know her. No. But I know now. The fluorescent light hummed. The rain tapped the basement windows. For one suspended second, Mara forgot to keep the tray between them because there was no tray, no hall, no laughing donors. Only the dangerous man across from her, holding a fragile piece of paper as if it were a living thing. Then the side door above them opened. A woman's voice called down, sharp as a church bell. Mara Quinn, if you have brought trouble into my basement, it had better be the kind that washes its own pots. Mara closed her eyes. Sister Beatrice. Vincenzo looked toward the stairs. Sister Beatrice descended in black shoes, a gray cardigan, and the expression of a woman who had once made 3 teenage boys repaint an entire fence because they wrote one rude word on it. She was 72, small, and impossible. She reached the basement floor and looked Vincenzo Moretti up and down. You are Lucia's boy. The mafia boss of half the old neighborhood straightened as if called to school. Yes, sister. Mara bit the inside of her cheek. Sister Beatrice looked at the documents. Did he ask before touching the ledger? Yes, Mara said. Good. That is more than his father did. Vincenzo absorbed this with admirable stillness. Sister Beatrice moved to the counter, picked up the burned invitation, and clicked her tongue. Men love burning paper. They think ash cannot testify. Mara looked at Vincenzo. He was already looking at her. No one said anything for a moment. Then Sister Beatrice pointed at the sink. If you two are done staring at evidence in each other, there are mugs in the rack. Tea first. War after. Chapter 5, The First Real Ask. The tea was terrible. Sister Beatrice believed hospitality should be sincere but not indulgent, and her tea tasted like boiled discipline. Mara drank hers because she had been raised correctly. Vincenzo drank his because he was either brave or unwilling to lose a silent contest with a nun. They sat at one of the folding tables under a bulletin board covered with old notices. Sister Beatrice took the head chair, naturally. Carlo Venturi has been sniffing around the kitchen records for months, she said. He sent a young woman with perfect nails to ask whether Lucia's early papers could be borrowed for preservation. Did you give them to her? Vincenzo asked. Sister Beatrice stared. No, he said. Of course not. I gave her photocopies of the fish fry menus from 1998. Mara smiled into her cup. Sister Beatrice continued. Then the hall called about using Lucia's old story for a memorial campaign. I told them Lucia hated campaigns. Vincenzo looked up. She did? She hated anything that turned feeding people into applause. She said applause never filled a bowl. The line struck him visibly. Mara watched it happen. The man did not collapse under memory, but some old foundation shifted. She wondered how much of his mother he had inherited and how much of her had been hidden from him by men who needed her to be softer in the official story. Why did you not call me? He asked. Sister Beatrice lifted one eyebrow. Would you have come? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Mara respected the silence. Sister Beatrice did too, but only for 3 seconds. Exactly. Vincenzo set down his tea. I am here now. Because Mara put ash on your dinner plate. Beside it, Mara corrected. Health code. Vincenzo looked at her again. There it was, the almost smile. She was beginning to recognize it, which was a problem. Sister Beatrice saw the look too, because nuns saw everything and pretended it was prayer. Good, she said. Then here is what Lucia wanted. She opened a blue folder and removed a page in a plastic sleeve. It was a letter, handwritten in the same blue ink as the invitation. Lucia's script was careful, practical, and slanted slightly right. Vincenzo did not reach for it. This time he looked at Mara first. She was not sure why. Maybe because she had become, for this one night, the keeper of paper no one else had wanted to read. Mara nodded. Only then did he take the letter. He read it once in silence. His face changed in small increments. First tension. Then disbelief. Then something that looked very much like shame. Mara looked away because she had not earned the right to witness every private wound. Vincenzo noticed. That made the looking away feel intimate, which annoyed her again. Read the last paragraph, Sister Beatrice said. His voice was lower when he obeyed. If my son ever has more power than he has peace, remind him that Moretti money first bought flour from women who had none. If he puts my name on a wall, make him put bread under it. Mara stared at her tea. Vincenzo folded the letter back into the sleeve with excessive care. She wrote this to you, he asked Sister Beatrice. She wrote it to the kitchen. I simply outlived the others. Carlo knew. He knew there was a letter. He did not know where I kept it. Where? Behind the Christmas pageant costumes. Mara made a sound she could not hide. Vincenzo looked at her. Something funny? I am imagining Carlo Venturi defeated by shepherd outfits. The almost smile returned, deeper this time. It suits him. Sister Beatrice pointed between them. No flirting over fraud. Mara choked on tea. Vincenzo went still. Sister, he said. I taught your mother catechism. Do not use that voice on me. Mara had to set the cup down. Vincenzo looked as if he were choosing between denying the accusation and surrendering to a higher tactical authority. Wisely, he chose neither. What do you need? He asked. Sister Beatrice leaned back. Wrong question. He waited. She pointed at Mara. Ask her. Mara blinked. Me? You are the one who reads rooms, receipts, and men who think old women are decoration. What does the kitchen need? Mara felt Vincenzo's attention turn to her, and this time it was not the attention of a man demanding evidence. It was the attention of a man offering space. She did not know what to do with that, so she did what she always did. She became practical. The kitchen needs legal authority separated from the hall, she said. A clean non-profit board with at least 2 seats held by women who actually run the meals. It needs the original Saint Agnes supper room name restored, not converted into Moretti branding. It needs a food budget protected from event rentals. It needs access to the back entrance repaired because old people cannot carry grocery bags down broken stairs. Vincenzo listened. Not nodded while planning his own answer. Listened. Mara continued, feeling steadier. It needs staff paid. Not volunteers pretending they do not need rent money. It needs a rule that no donor can decide who deserves a meal. And it needs your mother's name used in full, Lucia Bianchi Moretti, because both parts mattered and neither belongs to Carlo Venturi. Sister Beatrice's face softened for half a second. Vincenzo's did not soften. It became more serious. Done, he said. Mara shook her head. No. He looked surprised. No? You do not get to say done like a king dropping coins in a bowl. You asked what it needs. Now you take notes, call lawyers tomorrow, and bring drafts back for people who know this kitchen to read. Silence. Sister Beatrice sipped her terrible tea with visible pleasure. Vincenzo watched Mara with a stillness that made the room feel smaller. You want me to take notes? Yes. On what? Mara looked around, found a church raffle flyer and a pencil beside the sugar tin, and slid both across the table. Back of that. Sister Beatrice muttered, good girl. Vincenzo Moretti, who had likely signed contracts worth millions on thick paper under polished lights, turned over a raffle flyer for a parish bake sale and wrote, Legal authority separated from hall. Mara looked down quickly. The thing inside her chest had no business warming. He wrote every word she said. When she slowed, he waited. When she corrected a phrase, he crossed it out and rewrote it. When Sister Beatrice added that the back stairs had been broken since Pentecost and anyone with eyes should be ashamed, he wrote that too. It was nearly 1 in the morning when they finished. The basement felt different by then. Not solved. Not safe. But occupied by truth again. Sister Beatrice gathered the original letter and receipts. These remain here. I need copies, Vincenzo said. You may receive copies when Mara brings them tomorrow. Mara opened her mouth. Sister, I work a double tomorrow. Not anymore. Mara frowned. I need the hours. Vincenzo looked up. The hall will pay you for tomorrow. The hall fired me. The hall will discover it did not. That sounds like you controlling my job. That sounds like me correcting retaliation. There is a difference. There can be. The answer was too careful to be dismissed. Mara studied him. He did not look offended by her suspicion. That was perhaps the most unsettling thing about him. He seemed to understand that any intelligent woman would test the shape of a powerful man's help before stepping onto it. Fine, she said. But if Doyle pays me, he pays the whole crew. He will. Including dishwashers. Especially dishwashers. And he writes it down. Vincenzo lifted the raffle flyer. Mara almost smiled. Sister Beatrice stood. Now both of you go. I am old, not dead, and I need sleep. They rose. At the stairs, Vincenzo paused. Miss Quinn. Mara turned. Mara, he corrected, as if testing whether he had permission and asking for it at the same time. She let the correction stand. What? Thank you for not throwing the invitation away. She wanted to make a joke. She wanted to say she had considered it, or that ash clogged trash bags, or that banquet workers could not afford sentiment. Instead she said, thank you for reading the back. They stood there with the basement light behind them and the rainy church hallway ahead, both understanding more than either was ready to say. Then Sister Beatrice called up, if you kiss in my hallway, I will charge both of you rent. Mara walked out very quickly. Vincenzo followed, and for the first time that night, the Mafia Boss laughed. Chapter 6, Friday Dinner. Mara chose Saint Agnes Friday supper. Vincenzo arrived in a black suit because apparently even humility had a dress code, but he left the overcoat in the SUV and carried 2 crates of oranges from the trunk without asking a bodyguard to do it. The sight caused 3 volunteers to stare. Sister Beatrice inspected him over her glasses. Sleeves. Vincenzo looked at Mara. She rolled up her own sleeves. He rolled up his. Apron, Sister Beatrice said. One of the volunteers handed him a blue apron that read Saint Agnes Fish Fry 2007. Vincenzo put it on. Mara covered her mouth with both hands. Do not, he warned. I did not say anything. Your entire face is treason. My entire face is delighted. He tied the apron behind his back and looked down at it with the grave acceptance of a man walking into battle under an embarrassing flag. Good, Sister Beatrice said. You peel potatoes. I brought oranges. Then you can identify round objects. Potatoes next. Mara turned away and laughed into the pantry. Dinner began at 6. Not the romantic kind, perhaps, unless one understood romance as standing shoulder to shoulder with someone while he learned not to peel potatoes like he was interrogating them. Vincenzo was terrible at it at first, removing half the potato with each strip, until Mara took the peeler from him and placed his thumb correctly. His hand stilled under hers. The kitchen noise moved around them, pot lids, voices, Sister Beatrice telling a teenager that parsley was not confetti. Mara did not move away immediately. Like this, she said. Her voice sounded lower than intended. Vincenzo looked at their hands. You are very patient with potatoes. Potatoes are trying their best. And with men? Depends on whether the men are. His eyes met hers. I am, he said. That should not have affected her as much as it did. She released his hand and took refuge in the soup pot. The supper room filled by 6:30. Retirees, shift workers, 2 students from the community college, a mother with a stroller, an old man who brought his own hot sauce, and 3 boys who tried to pretend they had come only because the basketball court was closed. No cameras. No donors. No ivory linens. Vincenzo served bread. Awkwardly at first. Then better. People recognized him, of course. The room changed when they did. But Mara watched something else happen too. Vincenzo did not let recognition become performance. He did not make speeches. He did not pose beside old women or hold babies or turn service into proof of redemption. He handed out bread. When someone thanked him, he nodded. When a child asked why his shoes were shiny, he said, "Bad habit." When Sister Beatrice told him to refill water pitchers, he did. Mara found him near the service window later, holding the burned invitation in its sleeve. "You brought it?" she asked. "You said evidence should stay visible until systems change." "I did say that. Frequently. You needed repetition." He looked at her, and the kitchen noise seemed to soften behind them. "I needed you." Mara's breath changed. The words were not dramatic. No one heard them. No thunder rolled. No chandelier glittered. That made them worse. Better. Real. "Vincenzo." "I know," he said. "Too much." "No." He waited. She took the invitation sleeve from him and set it on the service counter between them. The burned corner caught the fluorescent light. "You needed someone to tell you what you were not seeing," she said. "Yes. That is not the same as needing me." "No," he said. "It is not." He looked down at the invitation, then back at her. "I needed someone to tell me what I was not seeing. I want you because after you did, you stayed long enough to make me better at looking." Mara looked at him. The din of the supper room blurred, and for once she did not reach for sarcasm quickly enough. He continued, softer. "If that is too much, tell me. If it is too soon, tell me. If Friday's supper is all I get, I will peel terrible potatoes and call it an honor." Her laugh came out uneven. "They were terrible potatoes. I know. You improved. I had a good teacher." Flattery. Evidence. Mara wanted to kiss him then. The wanting startled her less than the decision after it. She looked toward the supper room. Sister Beatrice was correcting a teenager's napkin folding with spiritual severity. Rosa had come by with extra pies and was pretending not to watch. Vincenzo's bodyguard stood near the basement door, holding a tray of rolls as if guarding bread were a career advancement. Mara turned back. "Ask," she said. Vincenzo went very still. "Mara Quinn," he said, voice low enough that only she heard, "may I kiss you?" No man had ever made the question feel more dangerous than command. Because he would accept the answer. That was the danger. "Yes," she said. He did not grab her. He stepped closer, slowly enough for refusal to remain possible, and touched her cheek with the back of his fingers before he leaned down. His mouth met hers gently at first, a question even after permission. Mara answered by setting one hand against his chest, feeling the hard beat under the black shirt and the ridiculous blue apron. The kiss deepened. Not enough for scandal. Enough for truth. Somewhere behind them, Rosa whispered, "Finally." Sister Beatrice said, "Soup first, romance after." Mara broke the kiss laughing against Vincenzo's mouth. He rested his forehead near hers for 1 second, not quite touching. "I am going to be disciplined by a nun for kissing you," he said. "You have survived worse." "Not recently." She stepped back, but she did not take her hand from his chest immediately. "We still have rules," she said. "Tell me." "The kitchen is not yours to give me." "Agreed." "My job is not yours to fix without asking." "Agreed." "If we have dinner, or supper, or whatever this becomes, you do not get to decide that protection means control." "Agreed." "And if your lawyers use the phrase community meal access framework, I will throw a potato. I will warn them." She smiled then, not because everything was safe but because safety was being negotiated aloud, which was better than being promised by a man who expected gratitude. He touched the edge of the burned invitation. "One more rule," he asked. "You are asking for rules now?" "I am learning." "Fine." "What?" "If I forget to read the back of something, you tell me." Mara looked at the card, at the blackened edge, at the names that had survived because ash had not finished its work. "I will," she said. Chapter 7, The Name on the Door. 6 weeks later, the new sign went up over the Saint Agnes basement entrance. It did not say Moretti. That had taken 2 lawyer meetings, 1 argument in a diner booth, and Sister Beatrice threatening to haunt Vincenzo while still alive. The sign read, "Lucia Bianchi Moretti and Mara Quinn Supper Room." Under it, in smaller letters, "Open tables. Hot meals. No questions at the door." Mara stood on the sidewalk with her arms crossed, pretending the dust in the air bothered her eyes. Vincenzo stood beside her. The black SUV waited at the curb, but today no one watched it. The neighborhood watched the sign. Rosa brought coffee. Sister Beatrice brought a ladder no one trusted her to climb. The dishwashers from the banquet hall came after their shift because Doyle had paid them, and paid them again when Vincenzo's audit uncovered 3 years of missing overtime. 2 of the old donors came too, sheepish but useful, carrying boxes of canned tomatoes. Carlo Venturi did not come. He was busy discovering that shell foundations, like lies, became less charming under legal light. Mara held the original burned invitation in a new frame. Not fancy, because she had refused fancy. The frame was simple oak, and the card rested between the first rent receipt and Lucia's letter. The display would hang inside by the service window, where volunteers, workers, and guests could see it. Evidence first. Inspiration second. Vincenzo looked at the frame. Are you sure about putting it there? Yes. It is fragile. So are promises when no one looks at them. He nodded. They had become good at that, the two of them. Not agreeing automatically. Not smoothing everything with attraction. Listening, considering, changing words until both could stand on them. Their romance had not become simple. Mara doubted romance with Vincenzo Moretti could ever be simple. He still had men who called him before sunrise, rooms that went silent when he entered, and a past that did not become clean because he learned to peel potatoes. Mara still worked too much, distrusted easy rescue, and sometimes argued with him because he could make "I will handle it" sound like a locked door. But he caught himself now. More than that, he let her catch him. Last week, when a contractor tried to speak only to Vincenzo about the kitchen door, Vincenzo had said, "Mara has the final decision on the service entrance." Then he had stepped aside before she had to ask. Mara had kissed him behind the flower shelf later. Sister Beatrice had coughed from the pantry and said, "I am not blind, only merciful." Today, as the sign settled into place, Vincenzo reached for Mara's hand in public and stopped half an inch away. She looked down. "You can," she said. He took her hand. The neighborhood saw. Let them. A reporter from the local paper approached with a notebook. "Miss Quinn, what do you want people to remember about tonight?" Mara glanced at Vincenzo. He did not answer for her. Good man. Dangerous man. Learning man. She looked back at the reporter. That the women who fed people were not side notes. That service workers know things because we pay attention. And that if someone burns an invitation, you should always read the back before throwing it away. The reporter wrote quickly. "Mr. Moretti," she asked, "anything to add?" Vincenzo's thumb moved once over Mara's knuckles. "Yes," he said. "I almost signed away my mother's promise because I trusted the wrong polished men and ignored the right tired woman." Mara's throat tightened. He looked at her then, not at the reporter. "I do not intend to make that mistake twice." The reporter, wisely, wrote that down too. Inside, the supper room opened at 6. The first meal was Lucia's chicken soup, with enough lemon to make children think they were eating sunshine and enough salt to make Mara Quinn stop arguing in heaven, assuming heaven had a kitchen and Mary had not already reorganized it. Mara served from the long stainless counter while Vincenzo handed out bread. He had improved. A little. At 7:30, after the rush slowed, Mara found him by the framed invitation. He stood with his hands in his pockets, looking at the names on the back. "You all right?" she asked. "No." She came beside him. "Want to be?" "Not yet." That answer was honest enough to hurt. Mara slipped her hand into his. "Okay." He looked down at their joined hands. "My mother would have liked you. Your mother would have argued with me about lemon. And liked you. My grandmother would have called you overdressed. And liked me?" Mara considered him. Black suit, rolled sleeves, blue apron again because Sister Beatrice had a sense of humor sharp enough to cut rope, a dangerous face made more human by exhaustion and soup steam. Eventually. I will accept eventually. Smart. They stood there until Sister Beatrice called for more bowls. Before Mara returned to the counter, Vincenzo touched the frame once, not the invitation itself but the oak edge. "Thank you," he said. This time she knew he was not thanking her for the paper. He was thanking her for not letting him remain the kind of man who only read the front of things. Mara squeezed his hand. "Come on," she said. "The soup needs work." "Too much lemon?" "Not enough salt." He looked wounded on his mother's behalf. She laughed and pulled him toward the kitchen. Behind them, the burned wedding invitation stayed on the wall, blackened at one corner, stubborn at the center, carrying 4 women's names into a room full of people who would be fed because a waitress had refused to throw it away. And later, after the last bowl was washed and the last chair stacked, Vincenzo found Mara in the quiet kitchen holding the old frame under the light. "Dinner Friday?" he asked. This was dinner. Then breakfast? "You are persistent." "I am asking." She turned. There was the difference again. The old Vincenzo Moretti would have decided, arranged, controlled. This one stood with soup on his cuff and waited for an answer. Mara set the frame down. Breakfast, she said. Roses. 8. No bodyguards at the counter. By the door. One by the door. Fair. And no black car blocking the hydrant. Demanding woman. Observant woman. Yes, he said, and the word carried everything he had learned to see. Very. He kissed her then, after asking with his eyes and receiving the answer in her smile. It was not a public correction, not a press conference, not a moment for donors or reporters or old ghosts. It was just a man and a woman in a church basement that smelled of lemon, salt, coffee, and clean bowls. But on the wall behind them, the burned invitation held its place. Not trash. Not a prop. Proof. And Mara Quinn, who had spent half her life serving tables where powerful people forgot to look at the back of anything, finally let herself believe that some promises could survive ash, laughter, and men who thought women like her were temporary. Some promises could be read aloud. Some could be rewritten. And some, if the right woman refused to throw them away, could become a door that stayed open.